Okay, so good morning and welcome everyone, and thank you all for joining us this morning as we celebrate International Mother Earth Day. And the CCRAF is collaborating with the Trinidad ICA delegation, and we're really happy to have you here with us and happy to have our presenters with us who will be presenting on this interesting topic and providing us with some useful information. So my name is Michaela Grego-Karai. I'm a technical specialist in water and soil with ICA's Agricultural Climate Action and Sustainability Program. And so just to get you set up, if you don't have your name, put your name, and you could also add your country where you're from. As this session, we are catering for persons across the region, all the way from Belize down to Guyana, Trinidad, all the way up to the Bahamas. And so it would be lovely to see where everyone is from. Just to not disturb as the presenters are presenting, we'd be grateful if that you keep your mic on mute. Anytime that you're not speaking, we will have a section where we'll be having discussions and taking questions from you and any comments that you may have. Please feel free to put your camera on if that is possible for you. We do have the raise hand function in Zoom. So if you have any question during the discussion session, you could raise your hand and then we'll allow you to open your mic and speak. We will be recording this session. So after the session, we will share with you the recording and any material that we receive from the presenters today. And we have a QR code here where we will be uploading some of the material. So you could scan it, and we also have available past CCRAF material. And so I know we do have a lot of persons on it. I see a lot of familiar names, but for those of you who are new, the Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum is a network trying to bring together the Caribbean region and looking to build the agriculture sector. And so it is a knowledge to action framework. And what we aim to do is we aim to raise awareness and share knowledge on climate smart agricultural practices, but also general agriculture and persons within the agricultural food system and options for the Caribbean region. And so in bringing persons together, we look to build a community of engaged and interested persons, inclusive of yourselves, both at the regional and the national levels. And as such, we want to promote, very importantly, enhanced coordination and collaboration, as you know, in order to, adjust and adapt to a lot of the climatic changes, the economic changes. We need some greater collaboration within the countries as well as across the region. And so we want to build that coordination and collaboration among the stakeholders, partners, and other institutions within the agricultural sector. But very important for the Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum, which we term the CCRAF, is that we don't want to only share the knowledge with you, share information with you, but what we also want to do is share with you practical information that you can almost use immediately, but also translating that technical knowledge to practical action on the ground for some more direct intervention on the ground. And so with that, today we have collaboratively the ICA Trinidad delegation, and we will be presenting today on the subject, making climate action self-financing for viable ecosystem-based adaptation and nature-based solutions, livelihood and green businesses. I would like to now pass on to Ms. Diane Francis, who is a representative for the Trinidad office, and she'll be giving you a bit background and introducing some of the speakers with us today. Again, thank you for joining us, and I do hope that this session will definitely be informative and relevant to you. Diane?
Thank you, Nikhila. Thank you all, and good morning, everyone. Let me just quickly share my screen. Right, so, right. So good morning, everybody. And let me again echo Nikhila's welcome and confirm her introduction that the CCRAF is a knowledge sharing platform that hopes to build consensus on a number of issues critically saving our planet. And today, on International Mother Earth Day, I think it's important to have this conversation. I'll be brief really because the objective for me being here this morning is to essentially gather information from the technical experts and the practitioners in this particular field on green engineering and green business, to allow us to determine what comes next after the project that we had and how we can mainstream ecosystem-based adaptation and nature-based solutions in public sector decision-making, private sector business offerings, and community self-reliance initiatives in the absence of having an externally funded project. This whole EbA NbS conversation emerged from the fact that we had a project with the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, and we know that projects have an important role to play in development. So this discussion we're having here is set deliberately to remind us that when projects end, the problems that the projects were set up to attempt to solve, they still continue with or without projects. So in this specific instance, ECAN partners, including the I Am movement, community-based organizations in the Caribbean, and in North Caribbean, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, and Tobago, spent at least 2.5 years after COVID allowed us to move around and have training, implementing the EbA project. The project ended in September 2023, and the question still remains, what next? Just to confirm that, according to the CBF program manager of the EbA facility, the EbA is built on 3 interdependent pillars, one being conservation of biodiversity and ecosystems, making use of the ecosystems of climate change adaptation, and also making use of those same ecosystems for socioeconomic benefits. Today is Earth Day. Natalia, I think the poll is kind of interfering with. Let me stop it. Let me stop right and try to start again. I think the poll is interfering, but I don't know. Let's start again. Let's see. From beginning. Okay, so right. So just to say happy Mother Earth Day. All of us rely on Mother Earth for our lives and our livelihoods. So this conversation we're having essentially recognizes that on this day that is set globally for us to recognize the Earth and its ecosystems are our home, and it is critical to promote harmony with nature, then it is important for us to have this conversation on green business, geoengineering, whether it's done on its own or matched with other contemporary solutions. So the reason for the IMED, I have 3 areas in bold and highlighted. First of all, is to raise public awareness on the challenges. I think by now, all of us in this world, on this earth, are well aware of what those challenges are of the planet. So I don't think awareness raising is something that is an emphasis now, because we are feeling the pain of the challenges across every part of this ecosystem, every part of the world. So raising awareness, it's already there, that's a plus. The second critical thing is that we have to recognize the collective responsibility. I think that part is not very, we haven't arrived at that global consensus yet, because we still have some deniers, we still have some persons being on the fence. But I think we need to actually have a collective responsibility. For CARICOM countries, it is more important because we are small island states and we have a collective responsibility towards protecting the Mother Earth. And the third one really that is highlighted is we have to achieve a just balance among the economic, social, environmental needs of the planet. Now, these 3 areas of the International Mother Earth Day observation of IMED, all of those essentially were part of the ECA-CBF EbA project. And one of the things that the project manager of the EbA facility in the CBF always confirms or indicates is that you cannot have a true EbA project if those 3 components are not in balance. And therefore, it's important for us to have all the 3 together. So moving on, I'm showing these pictures essentially on Mother Earth Day to hammer out the message that while we need to have development, economic development cannot come at the expense of Mother Earth. So as you will see, this picture shows that Dominica is on its path towards an international airport. You see, you notice this scale of Earth movements in Dominica. Anybody who knows Dominica knows that Dominica is a mountainous, rugged terrain. And our motto in our coat of arms says, "Après bord c'est la terre." That means after Earth, the earth. And essentially that is what Dominica, just one project in Dominica looks like, the scale of earth movements in one location in Dominica International Airport. This is a similar picture for the international airport, the new international airport in St. Vincent, where they built the airport, but you can see exposed land, barren, just above the airport. If you have some torrential rains and whatever, and you know what the impact is going to be. So again, you do have to have economic development. Airports are a critical aspect of those developments, but the question becomes, how do you achieve the balance between what is economically required and what is an environmental imperative? Another picture shows the Cook's landfill in Antigua. Again, as populations grow, as industries develop, as the residential areas get wider and wider and expand, you need to have some place where you dispose of our waste. And the Cook's landfill is an example of waste disposal sites across the Caribbean that are bursting their seams essentially. But the important thing about the Cook's landfill, including the one in Trinidad, is that they are bordering mangrove areas. Now, you know, mangroves are under threat globally, and mangroves are critical ecosystems. So pollution of mangrove areas creates problems for the planet, and therefore once it's the problems of the planet, it creates problems for humans on that planet. So that's another example of why Mother Earth Day is so important to be observed, not just observed, but action taken towards the earth. This again is in Dominica, a community where, again, landslides, and allegedly the landslide was triggered by, again, housing developments and poor infrastructure for water, and therefore too much water. Hence, you have undermining of the soils, and then with any rainfall, again, you have significant land slippage. So these are scenes that you can find across, I suppose, all the Caribbean islands, particularly those that are heavily mountainous. In terms of solutions, this is one of the solutions that the project proposed with the support of the IAMovement, where we use geoengineering, and the focus was on the vetiver grass because, as Kevan will tell you after, because of the root properties as a barrier in the soil. That's one of the locations of a housing development in Dominica again, where you declared the land in order to have the terracing, and the housing is on top. Again, without incorporating other proper solutions, even the vetiver grass may not necessarily be a full single solution on its own. This is a 20-plus-year-old vetiver integrated into a sewer system at a Rosalie Bay Resort, an eco resort. It has been there for over 20 years. So the message this is sending is that this is not a new practice. It is not a new technology. It is nothing new to us in the Caribbean. The question becomes, why have we left it aside? And why have we focused so much on contemporary and gray engineering? And this brings us to the questions or the reasons why we're having that discussion today. So we did have the ECA-CBF project. And why did we have the project? Because we recognize that the islands in the Caribbean are extremely exposed to extreme weather. And I'm saying the islands and not necessarily mainland countries. The focus was really on promoting sustainable land management and mitigating soil erosion and slope failure. So this is the reason why we had the EbA project in the 4 countries, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, and Tobago, island states in the Caribbean. What is the value added of the project? Well, we actually experienced a lot of the extreme weather while implementing the projects, and that allowed us to have a real valuable real-time living laboratory for providing context to why we need to have EbA and nature-based type solutions. In terms of the 4 countries, the situations in those 4 countries were so different that it also allowed us to determine how that EbA nature-based solution using the vetiver, how it had to be adjusted, tweaked, changed in different types of landscape and environmental conditions. So that was also a learning tool for us. But more importantly, and again, that is why we're having a conversation today, between IAMovement and ECA and other partners locally, we were able to train a few people, at least around 8 of them or so, who were willing to take green engineering using vetiver and adding on other CSAs and NbS and EbA solutions to it, take it on as a business, as a geoengineering business moving forward. And therefore, the question is, was this project just a moment to actually show or promote awareness that EbA, NbS, and climate smart agriculture and any other sustainable land management practices feasible, or should the project really be a movement to ensure that what we know can be done can now be mainstream, actions can be taken to mainstream? And the question is, moving forward, there's always a what next after project. So the what next really for us would be for us to learn is what do we need to do and how can we do it in order to help grow this new geoengineering services beyond and without benefiting or depending on development project support. So that is why we want to have the conversation today, to really find out from everybody who's had experience in it, is this something that can be done feasibly as a viable business in the CARICOM countries? Are persons willing to pay for that kind of service? Can it be mainstreamed? Will the public sector and civil works look towards green geoengineering, you know, as part of the solution kit? What do we need to do to just always stop depending on projects for development on earth matters? And what can we do to promote and to ensure that these things become viable businesses and can be sustained beyond just a project? So this conversation is built around persons who have been working in this area, who have experiences to share. And also importantly, what we found after we completed the project was that while we were teaching and showing persons how to grow the vetiver, how to harvest the vetiver, how to plant the vetiver on slopes using all kinds of techniques, it was based on a project cost framework. So importantly, we got these services of a financial person, Ataul, to try to develop a template, a cost production template, a costing template for just site installation using vetiver as a base for us to understand what are the cost and profit margins, or what are the cost and profit profile of using a vetiver site installation or a vetiver geoengineering compared to gray engineering, like a retaining wall or Gibeon baskets. So that one for us is an important value added. And what we want to come out at the end of this conversation here today is to determine whether or not the assumptions made to that costing model are complete, whether there are other things we have to do to tweak it, and whether it forms a good base for us to start to build on so that we can support persons like Troy in Dominica and Elijah in St. Lucia and Vernon in Tobago, who have taken on the challenge to grow that geoengineering business into one that is not dependent on having a project provide all of the resources to go and do vetiver-based geoengineering. So I'm very happy that we're having this conversation finally. I'm really looking forward to the discussion around that quintessential question. Can geoengineering in countries like CARICOM, in economies like CARICOM, be mainstreamed? And if so, what would it take to mainstream it? And how much do we have to depend on continuous funding from external sources in order for us to be able to get that into our solution set, our solution kit in these islands, in our islands? So with that, I'd like to thank you for being here. And I will just take this opportunity now to introduce Bernard Nation, who is a natural resource engineer, company EnviroPlus Consult Inc. He's been doing the work with geoengineering, not just on vetiver or grass, but the whole package of geoengineering in terms of, and not just in Dominica, but in the other islands. So his experience, his recommendations, his advice on this whole question about can we mainstream geoengineering using nature-based solution, using ecosystem-based principles, can we mainstream that into our land management practices, decisions, and actions in this part of the world? And what would it take to do so? And are we willing to pay for those services as we pay for retaining walls and Gibeon baskets? So thank you so much for listening. I'm looking forward to the conversation. So Nikele, I don't know if you want to introduce Bernard or Bernard just take over the mic on his own.
Bernard, go ahead, since you've introduced him and what he's going to talk about. So Bernard, you go ahead. I think you have just about 10 minutes to discuss what it is you would like to share. Go ahead, thank you.
Morning, all. Are you coming over loud and clear?
You sounding a bit low, closer to your mic or something. A bit better.
Okay. All right. So good morning, and let me take this opportunity to wish everyone happy Mother Earth Day, and again, hope that everyone takes that solemn what I call a solemn responsibility of being been good stewards of the earth and what we have been gifted with. You know, you go through all the islands, and everyone is quite unique characteristics, species, and so forth, that all contribute to our well-being and to our enjoyment as humans. And so we must do our part to keep it as pristine and natural as possible. This morning I've been asked to share my experience on green engineering and in relation to the topic that I've just brought forward. And before I get into that, I really wanted to just establish this starting point, this parallel with the agricultural sector. You know, in the 60s or 70s, don't hold me to that, but when the Green Revolution came around, what we had was individuals or companies taking what were integrated systems with different species crops grown at different times, and establishing, you know, monocultures and all of these things, taking crops that were not necessarily well suited to a particular environment, and then utilizing external inputs to ensure that these deliver certain quality and quantity consistently. And this in its this when you look at it in that way and you compare it to what exists before, is essentially what we see happening when we look at the conventional type of engineering as compared to geoengineering. Our current population has become quite used to being able to just go to the market and having their supplies of whatever foods they want in whatever quantities and so forth, and having it almost on demand and not wanting to wait for it. Whereas with the geoengineering and the agricultural production systems prior to the green the Green Revolution, we had systems that would manage, that would organize, but that would meet the general objective, but that would be met as long as we continue to manage and organize. And so with green engineering. Green engineering basically speaks towards having an organized system, a holistic system. I know the focus this morning and during the EbA has been on the vetiver, the use of vetiver and so on. But I would like to encourage that we look at that a little bit on a wider scale as vetiver, just being one part of one part or one cog in an essential machine that we can utilize to address some of the issues that we are facing currently. And Diane made the point earlier that you're wondering why why it seems like our policymakers and so seems to favor the gray engineering as compared to the green engineering. And one of the main reasons I think is because though it is generally more expensive, but once it is completed, you have the full benefit of it, and you don't have to wait. Whereas in the green engineering, geoengineering, you normally have to wait for a period of time for plants to grow, for systems to be established and to work well, and to get that kind of benefit you get almost immediately once you implement the green engineering. And as such, these politicians or policymakers that are working on a 5-year cycle always tend to go towards that way in terms of having a more instant result. But when you look at the principles of green engineering, there are some important factors in there, I think, that demands that we take a closer look at it and really try our best to have this mainstream within the system. The fact that in doing a green engineering project, there must be a holistic analysis of the system, problem statements, looking at impacts and all of those things. You know, I think is essentially a very important factor, you know, in its selection over the green engineering. The fact that when you do that, you also incorporate the benefit, you also involve the beneficiaries in this, because usually the information for the analysis come from the beneficiaries, so they become quite aware of what is going on, and so have the ability to follow through and to go along the journey is also an essential factor, I think, that gives green engineering. That we need to really look at green engineering seriously, and look to get it mainstream within our development, within our development. Down in Dominica, we had two projects. Well, one of the project running simultaneously with the EbA, and that is the PISLM, and that looked at not just, again, looking at green-based solutions, but not just in terms of the VetiverTT, but also incorporating a number of other factors, such as drainage, other forms of green barriers, dead barriers in terms of stones, terracing, etc. So all of these factors in doing an analysis of whatever we're looking to solve, whatever issues we're looking to solve, is critical in having a holistic problem-solving approach. And so in moving forward and trying to move the green the businesses that have been developed from the VetiverTT and so forth, I think it's important to consider also building capacity in these other areas, so that what is offered is not just, you know, an issue of, you know, here we have this thing of slope stability or soil stability, and we recommending as an alternative, but we have it a holistic view. We're recommending not just the VetiverTT, but also water control, also stabilization via maybe terracing and so forth. Also other agroforestry species, and also looking now at the end of it that in order for it to be sustainable, we putting in other plant species, etc., that will have some benefit and can be channeled into other enterprises. One of the projects that we're currently working on is the restoration of 7 acres of land on the west coast of Dominica, and utilizing the very techniques that I just mentioned in terms of contour drainage, stone barriers, and VetiverTT, on other green barriers. VetiverTT have been highlighted, but there's also been the use of elephant grass, bamboo, and these other things that also give similar results. So the ability to get an analysis done of the site and then design a complete solution, I think, is going to better enable us to come up with tangible solutions that policymakers cannot ignore. And also we also the public relations part of it in broadcasting and also making the general population aware of these interventions are also very critical in ensuring their sustainability. I will not take much more time in terms of this discuss. I hope I've stayed within my 10 minutes, Mrs. Karai. And so if there are any other questions, if there are any questions, I will take it. I'll just say before that we have the in terms of the alternative industries that we're looking to generate generate income from in this project we are doing. We have targeted the people that are into apiculture. So some of the green the species that we are putting in are things that the bee needs for food. Also, we are cooperating also with the craft people, and we're also putting in some plant species that will be used in craft work and so. But you will all appreciate that will take some time for those plants to mature and for you to get the benefit. And so that is why it is well understood now that to get this initial work done, and so that we have the product to advertise, you need the project funding is almost required at this point, so that once we can show success stories of those initiatives, then I believe down the line that we can move to the point where those can be self-sustaining and people will actually come, or various enterprises or wherever will actually come and pay for those services.
Thanks, Mr. Nation. Thanks very much for that. So for the participants, Mr. Nation will not be able to stay with us till the end for the discussion part. So if anybody has any questions specific that they would like to ask him, we'll take the opportunity for some questions now, and then we will move into the other presenters of today. So if anybody have any question, you could either raise your hand or you could type your question in the chat for Mr. Nation before he leaves us.
Okay, Nikhila, let me jump in here while we're waiting for the hands to be raised. I just want to ask Bernard, in terms of all of his experience doing those, again, the Livelihood projects, especially projects funded by somebody, whether it's government or whether it's a donor, or outside of those projects, has there been any demand by individuals, by other private sector, for the kind of geoengineering services that your company offers? And if so, do you have to do a lot to mobilize a kind of demand, or do you think it's ready, it's there?
On a smaller scale, definitely. And the main clients have been farmers. Some of the larger landowners have recognized the importance of proper land planning, and again in terms of the whole holistic approach that I mentioned that is required for those geoengineering initiatives. So they have recognized the need for land planning and have called on us and have been willing to pay, have paid for that type of activity. So in terms of doing the plans as to where they should put what particular enterprise, where they do it, in terms of having drainage plans done, also in terms of even in terms of the roads that they establish, because a lot of them have seen the impacts of just doing this thing without, you know, the proper intervention or the proper analysis, in that the cutting of the access road has been the starting point for land slippage, and the areas of improper drainage, where improper drainage have been put in, has been the starting point for many of our landslides. So we have had significant interest from farmers on that count, and also when Troy comes in, he will also tell you farmers have been requesting and paying for the sets, the vetiver sets, to do just that, because once the designs are done, then they go about to implement it on their properties.
Okay, thanks, Nation. So we have Shoba hands up, and in the interim, we have a participant asking for contact information. Bernard, if you could type that in the chat for them. Shoba, you could go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Nikhila. Good morning, everyone. I am Shoba Marimuthu from Trinidad and Tobago. I had a question for Mr. Nation in terms of implementing these nature-based solutions and so forth, I know you're talking about the farmers, but what has been your experience when you have to implement and you have this holistic approach, I should say, to improving agriculture through agroecology, green technology, and so forth? The farmer does the implementation, but what about his neighbor and the community approach? How has that been impacting success and improvements?
That's a very good question, and it brings out a very important point I negated to mention, in that these approaches in terms of geoengineering and other green engineering works best on a catchment level. And so what your neighbor do will impact you. And we got this, we had this scenario back in 2015. And again, in Dominica, we have moved forward a bit in terms of the acceptance of this green engineering, geoengineering initiatives, because of the frequency with which we have been hit with natural disasters. And so for the other countries that have not gotten it so often, then, you know, I would quite understand the reluctance, you know, by some of the policymakers to move towards some of the potential beneficiaries to move towards that way. But with us, you know, there's an area called Cochrane, for those of you who are familiar with Dominica. And in 2015, we had a tropical storm, Erica, that came through. And we had, in collaboration with EbA, we implemented a geoengineering approach to stabilize an area that supported 2 major roadways. So that was designed, that was implemented, and though it was not well maintained, we have been following up on it, and have had no earth movement in that area since this has been implemented. And so this I often use when I speak to various groups in Dominica, as you know, somewhere they could go and they're familiar with, to see the importance of this. But to address your question directly, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, but you know, in terms, can you just Miss Shoba, can you just mention remind me the point, the exact point you wanted to respond on?
Oh, sure. I just wanted you to speak to how impact and improvements have really progressed with challenges in implementing these technologies, where individuals or few farmers would implement them, but you don't have that community getting in to really give that true impact.
But you know, these things are scalable. These initiatives are scalable, and what we have, you know, there are certain events that will be broader than others, depending also on the causative agent. But what we had, and I was mentioning after Erica, this small area we did was only maybe half an acre, and when we had a tropical depression preceding that, that area stayed and a number of neighboring areas got impacted. The same was true of an FAO-funded initiative in the Bellevue area. It stayed intact, where the initiatives were done, where the various strategies were implemented, and the neighboring farms were impacted. So almost immediately after, we started getting calls, hey, you know, I need you to come and look at my area and see what we can do. So yes, it is always better when it is done on a catchment area, especially when you're talking about events of certain magnitudes that will impact, you know, the entire catchment. But notwithstanding, you know, for the smaller events, even doing a small area, there could be benefits that other people can see and want to partner.
Okay, thank you, Nation. I don't see any other question in the chat, and so we do have some other presenters. I'm seeing Krista Joy. Krista Joy, go ahead. So we'll take this last question, and then we'll move on to the other presenters. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question to Shobha's. It was kind of similar. I also wanted to inquire in Dominica, as it relates to the projects that are being implemented, how hard has it been, Mr. Nation, to implement perhaps in the indigenous territory? Given that I guess the land is not, it's not individually owned, it's communal assets. And also for farmers in general, I didn't hear exactly, but as it relates to vetiver grass and putting them in, has it at any point in Dominica, have you seen any impacts of it being a bit invasive, or has it reduced the amount of space that's available for farmers to continue on their plots of land? Thanks.
First part of your question with regards to the implementation of these initiatives in the indigenous areas. Actually, the mindset of the people within the indigenous area is one of conservation. So we have found that it is much easier to convince and to get them to take action than in the other areas. So a lot of a significant part of the work that was done in the EbA were also implemented throughout the Kalanago territory. And even when we wanted to get planting material to start on different areas for the vetiver and so forth, that is where we were getting planting material from. So the indigenous people, they have the mindset of to conserve the environment already. So, you know, that was a big plus for this initiative. And they are taking it forward, even without the projects, because there's a road called the Horseback Ridge. And along that Horseback Ridge, there have been a number of initiatives where I've been asked to make interventions for where they do it on a communal basis, and they go in and put in various other green barriers along the road to protect the roadway, and that has included bamboo, vetiver, and so forth. And they do it incrementally and so forth, and it is developing quite nicely currently. So, you know, that is it within the indigenous population. They are moving forward with this.
Okay, thanks. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Nation, for joining us and providing us with some of that information today. Of course, again, if you could put your contact information in the chat or share it with me, and I could share thereafter with the participants. So we will go on to our next presenter, who is...
I will beg, before I leave, the indulgence of the group in having the excuse from the other thing. If there are any other question, please, once I share my contact information, feel free to reach out. You know, we're always happy to collaborate and speak about these things. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Nation. And so,
Nikelia, before you move on to Kevan, I think there was the second part of the question to Bernard was about how the farmers take it. And just quickly, in terms of the experiences of the EbA project, where we wanted to get the vetiver on the farmers' lands, there was an initial hesitance because, as the young lady rightly said, farmers were concerned that the planting vetiver would take up space on their plot. But in areas like Dominica, where it's so steep, planting the vetiver single hedgerows allow the farmers to have much more control in terms of climbing up the hillside, pathways and water flow control and so forth. So I think it's all a matter of public awareness, education, and explain to them the benefits, and the farmers begin to see the benefits of it. I believe some farmers in Antigua who have much flatter land have taken the vetiver on to do for some specific purposes on their particular areas. So again, it's all a matter of reaching the persons and explain to them the benefits of the grass and how you can grow it on a particular situation, and then it may mainstream afterwards. But there's normally some pushback in terms of using up their land to grow grass as opposed to using up the land to grow crops, food crops.
Okay, great. Thanks, Diane. And so we'll go on to Kevan Maharaj. So you could go ahead and share your screen, Kevan, if you have a presentation, and he will be speaking on experiences in mainstreaming vetiver geoengineering in Trinidad and Tobago, and he is part of IAMovement in Trinidad. Kevan, it's yours.
Yes. Thank you, Nikila. So good morning, everyone, and happy Mother Earth Day to everyone on the call. So similar to Mr. Nation, I was also asked to share some experiences on implementing vetiver grass as a mainstream nature-based solution within Trinidad and Tobago. So IAMovement is the non-profit sister organization to VetiverTT, which is a private engineering firm within Trinidad and Tobago that implements vetiver grass as a nature-based solution. So I just will be sharing a little bit on experiences from both entities this morning. And I did have a PowerPoint presentation, so let me just quickly share my screen. Right. All right, great. So vetiver is a green business. So for those who aren't aware of vetiver grass, just really quickly, the reason why we promote vetiver grass as a climate adaptation tool is because of its deep and fibrous root system. When planted according to the vetiver system, actually, if you could think about it, because of the root system interlocking with the plants underground, you could think of an underground retaining wall or a retaining wall made of roots, right? Which has been shown to be very successful in retaining land. And I know Mr. Nation would have mentioned his use of vetiver as well. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a large number of sites that have benefited from the use of vetiver grass. Now, vetiver grass does not only have a long or a great root system, which is used for land stabilization. The plant is a multifaceted plant, can be used for many different applications, and that is something that VetiverTT Engineering would have also recognized, and they would have brought the knowledge of that to the table and utilized vetiver grass in different settings. And that is something that is very important if you want to mainstream vetiver grass, because as Diane would have mentioned, it's lost knowledge, so it's not new, but many people are unaware of how vetiver can actually help stabilize their land or help their communities in many different ways. So it's really about reintroducing the grass and having people understand the power of the grass. So first point, like I said, with VetiverTT is just understanding the many different uses. So we talk about this all the time with any business. If you rely on one single product, your business may not be as successful as if you could capitalize on the different value-added products that you could make from your raw materials, in this case, vetiver grass. So the vetiver system could help in a wide range of applications, right? And you see them all here. So infrastructure protection, topsoil loss reduction for farmers, agricultural land regeneration for spent agricultural land, or land that would have faced slippage as well. So livelihood creation, groundwater recharge, leachate treatment, because vetiver grass is a very good phytoremediator. So it's just really about trying to apply vetiver grass to not just one area or one revenue stream, which most people might immediately try to use it as an infrastructure protection tool, which is fine. But then understanding that you could also incorporate leachate treatment or land regeneration, as we have done in quarries, and we now have a pilot project at the Forest Park landfill with Swimcall, looking at vetiver grass as a way to manage leachate ponds. So it's just really to understand that there are many uses, and don't just think about vetiver in one particular aspect, but look at a holistic approach when implementing the vetiver grass and the vetiver system. And something I didn't mention, but it came up as a question earlier, is vetiver grass is non-invasive. So, and as certified by the USDA. So wherever you plant vetiver grass, it's not going to spread. It's going to remain exactly where it is. And because it's sterile, it has to be hand propagated. And that's how communities are actually encouraged to take part in vetiver planting and propagation and learning about the grass, because IAMovement and VetiverTT has also come together to make this particular project model, which we call the Vetiver Education and Empowerment Project Model, which has been very successful starting in 2016, 2017 up in the hillside community of Parliament, and has been expanding ever since. So these are just some pictures of some vetiver handicrafts produced within Trinidad and Tobago. So as you can see, there's another revenue stream if, you know, a vetiver green business firm is looking at possible diversification of their revenue streams. I know Ataul will get into the exact numbers a bit later, so I know we would see that a bit later. Another thing that has always been a challenge to implementing the vetiver system is the question, why vetiver grass? So with that, it's really and truly all about having pilot projects that you could showcase, or case studies that you could showcase within your country or other countries as they may be, because all of these would be from Trinidad and Tobago. You know, it's all about showcasing the power of the grass, because many people don't know, they don't have that knowledge of that green infrastructure tool, so they don't understand how they could benefit, you know, them. And having a good repository of various sites that would have achieved success, again, whether within, you know, your own country or within the Caribbean region, is always good to have access to. There are many different vetiver studies that have been done. Most would have been out of Thailand/India, but you can also access them on the Vetiver Network International, tvni.org. And we also have a TVNI for the West Indies. So it's TVNWI. So again, that would have a lot of information on vetiver grass, how it works, and, you know, various case studies which can be presented to persons who have any questions at all about vetiver grass. So I just have a few pictures of some of the work that would have been done in Trinidad and Tobago. So this is actually in Queenham. So this is deep south of Trinidad, or in Trinidad, where you see vetiver hedgerows being installed alongside the typical green infrastructure solutions, such as gabion baskets. So understanding that vetiver is not the end all and be all, you definitely can incorporate a combined approach. So, you know, that's something that VetiverTT has also learned and understand, or understood, and have been trying to partner with different organizations to have combined approaches to severely degraded land or severe slippages that may occur. So it's also about recognizing the extent to which the grass could be used, or the limitations of the grass, and understanding that so that you could best implement the grass within whichever setting you are trying to, you know, achieve land stabilization results. Then another point that I really wanted to highlight was just marketing and branding, because I know a question was raised about, you know, is there a demand for vetiver grass within, I think that was Dominica, but in Trinidad and Tobago, there is a demand for it. It has definitely picked up over the last few years, as more and more projects have been publicly displayed. You know, we do, so on the IAMovement side, we do a lot of education and communications around vetiver grass to just really enhance the awareness of the solution. So the picture on the right just really showcase VetiverTT's website, which, you know, they would have invested into to have, you know, just nice graphics, user-friendly, of course. You know, they could see all these services. And as I did mention, VetiverTT doesn't only focus on land stabilization, but or infrastructure protection. They look at all the different uses of vetiver and where it could be applied. thus giving them access to a greater size of market. And then they also have residential, well, they have pictures and examples of residential products. So a lot of people like to see before they buy with anything. And vetiver is no different, right? So having good marketing will definitely help you in being able to establish your brand better and as well mainstream the solution within your country. Yeah. So, and this was just an example. So you see how quickly I was able to just explain vetiver grass at the beginning of the presentation. We actually take laminates of this into the field to explain vetiver grass because, you know, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So having that picture on the left with the vetiver root system, and you're seeing how large that root system is compared to the man standing on the left, is, you know, just really, really powerful and impactful to those persons that we're trying to bring on board, that we're trying to get involved with utilizing vetiver grass as a stabilization tool or any of the other uses. So, you know, it's always good to have visuals that persons could relate to in order to get them on board to understand more about vetiver grass. And then to just have about 2 more points again, but another thing is strategic partnerships. So understanding that, you know, collaboration is always going to get you ahead of the game. Partnering with different organizations that, you know, there is a mutual benefit on both ends of, you know, implementing the vetiver system is always beneficial. So VetiverTT, you know, would work with Vernon Tobago, for instance, on jobs for vetiver installation, whether that might be that he needs technical expertise or he just needs additional support in sourcing plans or costing jobs, etc. So, you know, it's always good to be partnering with like-minded organizations where you could continue to grow and even access or tackle rather bigger jobs that, you know, you may not be able to handle initially on your own for those smaller green engineering firms. So that's just something that VetiverTT has also recognized, where even some of their geotextile that they put down in collaboration with the vetiver system, they are now looking at doing it with coconut matting and of course partnering with different entities that could offer that and bring that to the table. So that's just something to also mention as well. And then lastly, it's something I know we would have spoken about in the green engineering or green business classes that we would have done through the ECA project, but monitoring and evaluation, because VetiverTT and IAMovement understand having data on whatever you're implementing or trying to implement and being able to evaluate that data and make the necessary changes to your business model or approach in order to ensure that your revenue stream is not affected. So those are just some of the points I just wanted to share, experiences from VetiverTT side. I know we may have a few questions, but I think we have a discussion segment later on. So happy to answer any of those at the end. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Kevan. Diane, you want to come in there?
No. Well, on the agenda, we were supposed to have had Troy Shillingford from Dominica. Troy is one of the newest persons who took up the mantle to try and advance geoengineering business with vetiver, but he's having connectivity issues. According to him, he's on the top of the village, but still can't get enough bars to connect. So he's in the area, Petit-Soufrière, Saint-Sauveur, where we had a lot of those landslides and where the vetiver grass was being grown in a particular location. And he would tell you that in the area of the landslide, the piece of land where we put in the vetiver hedgerows did not come down with the landslide. It just passed on the side. So that is the impact, as Bernard said, of having the vetiver geoengineering done properly in order for us to secure and to stabilize our land and to reduce soil erosion. So I'm just making, just letting you know, apologies on his behalf, he cannot connect. And that is one of the development challenges that we're having in the rural areas. So that's all I wanted to say, Nigeria, for now.
Thanks, Diane. And so, of course, we will have the discussion session thereafter since we're speaking on the similar topics. And so now I will pass it on to Ataul Malik Ali-Kajim, and he will be speaking on blending the echoes, driving ecosystem action for economic imperatives, working out cost of production of geoengineering services. So Ataul, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. I always had a fun time in school with pronouncing my name. So let me get straight into the presentation because I believe this is the part that interests a lot of people, the money part. So agenda, I want to tell you a little bit about the definitions of the cost of production. I want to tell you a little bit about how the structure of the cost of production is, the development process in terms of how we develop the cost of production, and of course, the costing of the vetiver installation. So cost of production is a tool that we use for planning, is a guide to ascertain what the estimated cost will be for particular commodity, particular activity over production cycle. So in this instance, for vetiver installation, we looked at from beginning to installation of the vetiver and maintenance in terms of the time for the vetiver to establish itself. Now, with any model, the cost and price information is static because we taken that information at a particular point in time. So therefore, we must always bear in mind that we have to adjust the prices accordingly. So Troy's, for instance, Troy's scenario, if it is that we're using the model, will be certainly different to somebody who is in Trinidad, somebody different to somebody who's in Tobago, in their particular scenario. So we always have to bear that in mind, and we ascertain close to exact information from, of course, the interview and the site visit that we have to do when we are estimating the cost of productions. Now, again, because is a model, the tool is to build awareness as well, because sometimes things that we may not consider when we are estimating our cost for a particular activity, we have it documented. So that's what we did when we looked at the cost of production model. And again, the cost of production is a planning tool, a budgeting tool for persons who want to do projects. Now, the structure of the cost of production model has three main sections. So again, with every model, assumptions very heavily in terms of how the costing is ascribed. The cash flow or the costing itself, which is the cost of production and the returns section. And of course, the notes, which will supplement information that is gathered when we are doing the cost of production model itself. Now, in the structure itself is section 1, the assumptions. We look at the production coefficients for the particular activity. So luckily for me, when I was engaged to do the vetiver cost of production, there was a lot of technical information in terms of how to go about vetiver installation itself. So in terms of how you gather the slips, the site preparation, the fertilizer application, how you treat the soil as well too. So all of these things we look at when we did the assumptions for the vetiver. Again, when you are doing a cost of production, I mean, we're looking at vetiver in this instance, but you try as much as possible to use research with what professionals have, experienced farmers have in the field, because it will be true to form if it is that you're going to do something new. The section 2, of course, the estimated cost, production and the returns. And this is where we try to detail as much activities as possible when we are developing the cost of production. So I like to approach it, and how we actually approached it for the vetiver installation is a sort of a chronological order, where you have the site visit first, then you have the site preparation, you have the planting of the vetiver, you have the maintenance of the vetiver, and any other activity that is required to establish and maintain the vetiver commodity. And section 3, again with the notes, I try to, what I did in the cost of productions, we looked at all the technical information to place it as a reference. So anybody who is using the model in the future could see where it is that we got the information. And, you know, again, you could adjust based on if technology's changed, you could adjust the model accordingly. All right, so the development process. All right, so research, I spoke about this already. List the production maintenance activities, very, very detailed. List the inputs, we spoke about that. Now, in terms of the prices, what we did is that we looked at several agro shops, several input suppliers to give us the prices. In this instance, too, when we were developing one for in the Trinidad scenario, we use the averages. So of course, when based on your particular scenario, your cost may be a little more than others. So again, that is where in the model you adjust the prices. All right, and this is where we put out to you guys now in terms of verifying the information, and of course from based on the feedback today, we also adjust the model accordingly. So the costing of the vetiver grass installation system. Now, what I did when we looked at this particular scenario, we did a 60 meter or 200-foot hedgerow, which is roughly about 0.2 hectares or half an acre. We looked at 15 centimeters spacing at 4 rows, and the price per slip at $4. Now, labor cost, we also assumed in the model was for about $300 a day. And we got an estimated cost to establish and maintain the vetiver at $7,200 or $7,200 TT. Now, what was not included in the model is any site works or any specialist equipment that may be necessary to install the vetiver. I don't know if you'll notice from Kevan's one of his pictures, the guys had harnesses and stuff like that. So, you know, all of those things must be done in terms of our site assessment to ascribe what you exactly need for the installation. And again, the model put in we had a slot for the model for that. As well as we didn't consider any like drainage or any major geoengineering works to be done in this particular model. But of course, it can be included into the model when we're doing it. Now, one of the questions we get asked a lot is in terms of the maintenance cost. And based on the technical information that was given, again, from technical documentation, once you establish your vetiver hedgerow, the grass, when it's established itself, it suppresses the weeds around it. So there's a minimal cost into that. And of course, a question we get being posed us in the seminar today is, you know, how long it takes vetiver to establish itself. And again, based on the technical information, usually between 9 to 12 months to establish itself. Now, of course, we have to compare that to hardscape, so retaining wall. And luckily for me, this is a project actually on my project side that the Ministry of Works undertaken, and there's a very, very elaborate retaining wall. And actually, the size of the retaining wall is what it is that we're comparing to in this particular model. Now, we looked at again a 60-meter wall, 1.2 meters, which is about 4 feet high, and about 0.3 meters wide. And we looked at piling as well too, because I mean, we're not only looking at the top of the wall, but also bottom. And we looked, we assume that as vetiver grass grows 10 feet, we assume 10 feet or 3 meters piling for that, at about 10 feet intervals or 3 meters intervals. And the volume for the concrete alone, based on $1,000 meter cube, is about $68,000. And again, for this particular hardscape, we did not include the cost for the steel, concrete form, site preparation, labor, or any other contingencies was not considered for this particular scenario when we compare the vetiver and the hardscape. But as Mr. Nishan indicated, that hardscape or retaining wall solutions is instant. So we know that once you design your wall, again, based on the geotechnical reports, you know, you're more or less guaranteed that the site will be the soil will be preserved, the slope will be preserved. There's immediate results. All right. And one of the tools that I wanted to highlight, and Richard would expand on this a little more, is that, you know, we have the Farm View app. Now, the model that we designed is on the front end of things, where we look at the estimated costs, but the Farm View app, we can look at it as the days go by in terms of the scenario where we input in information live onto the system, so we can get that cost at the end of the day in a real-time basis. So now Richard will expand a little further on the FarmView app and uses of it in his discussion. So I want to thank you, and I will hand it over back to you, to the moderator.
Okay, thank you so much, Ataul. So we will just have Richard coming in to give some brief discussion as it relates to approaches and lessons learned in implementation of the EbA project, and, you know, the implementation of the vetiver grass. For those, I know some persons on there would have taken part in the CCRAF last year, where Richard would have presented on the FarmView app. We have the recording available on YouTube, on the CCRAF Facebook page for persons, and I will share those thereafter for persons who would want to have a look at that. Richard, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Nicalia. And like all the other presenters gone by, I take the opportunity to wish everybody happy Mother's Earth Day. And let's be custodians of our Mother Earth so that she can continue to provide the habitat for us to survive sustainably and for our future generations, our great-grandchildren, etc., to survive. So let me launch pad on what Ataul would have just ended his presentation on in terms of the FarmView app. Just a bit of a quick background. The FarmView app was developed in a collaboration with the Cropper Foundation, the National Agricultural Market and Development Company, NAMDEFCO, and ECA. And it was a collaboration where there's a project that was executed and funded by the IDB lab, executed by the Cropper Foundation, called Making Agriculture Profitable and Sustainable. And through that project, the idea spawned where they were looking for a traceability system and a cost of production system. And because of digitalization being so important right now for any business and agribusiness venture, farming and value-add processing, the app came as a solution where you can provide a record keeping, traceability aspect where you can record your cost, your actual production practices, and you will be able to capture your cost of production based on the input that you put in terms of your labor, your inputs and other inputs, your machinery cost, fuel, etc. And it will be able to generate a real cost of production for any crop that you have. So the idea was, in terms of this green engineering solution as a business, the app has a lot of potential and capability to capture the information of costs for managing your costs and for inputting your costs based on what Ataul would have presented as his model for cost of production. So in developing the scenario which Ataul just presented, we used the app, we ran the information through, and as you can see, what in terms of the key aspects of cost of production, in terms of your production site preparation, your crop, your actual crop production aspects, harvesting, and in harvesting, we speak about the leaf of the vetiver in this scenario, where it can be used as mulch and further value-add product developed, which there's a host of value-add products just outside of just craft. In terms of buyer and a sales solution, in terms of a facility where you actually doing the handicraft. So at each step of the costing model, there is potential to have a realistic cost for your vetiver service. And I know Mr. Nation, if he's here, there's Kevan here, who when they are doing tenders for jobs and they are costing jobs, for instance, these are the things that they will want to have considered and considering. Because going into a job, everybody looks for the cheapest solution most of the times, that they look for the most feasible and economic solution that fits their budget. And if it is that you are providing a solution going into the geoengineering solution way versus a hard engineering or gray engineering solution, a traditional conventional engineering solution, what you'll want to do is to actually know that what you are going to implement is not going to break your business, first of all, and it's going to be competitive enough as a solution that you could get the job to implement once people see the benefit, not only in terms of the numbers and figures, which mostly they look at, but most from the outside picture of the wider sustainability aspect of the solution. Now, just quickly, the FarmView app for the colleagues outside of Trinidad and Tobago on this webinar right now, it is geofenced to Trinidad and Tobago, and for a specific reason, because the app was really developed for a traceability system for Trinidad and Tobago. So don't be afraid. We are working on a solution to see how we can have it to the wider Caribbean. Everybody has a unique take in terms of what they want the app to do for them, and it is a bit of a challenge how we marry the expectations and the delivery of what everybody wants. But we're working on solutions for it. But just to state in terms of this discussion that the FarmView app has the potential to input information to a green engineering business in terms of tracking its cost. And it has a wide window of opportunity outside of just, for instance, the vetiver grass. For instance, how we can there's a window of opportunity where we can modify the app or adapt the app to other solutions. For instance, mangrove restoration or coral reef restoration as an example of a nature-based solution where we can actually track those costs and have it real time. So persons implementing projects, programs, doing land management issues, water management planning, and sustainable development plans. These are things as a window of opportunity I definitely see that we can get kick-started. So outside of the FarmView app, I just wanted to preempt and just get a discussion, ask just prompting questions to some of the presenters in terms of how the green business model could be used and adapted, and the simplicity of using a model such as what Ataul would have presented as a cost of production. So outside of the technical jargon, you know, Ataul used production coefficients and stuff like that. But the main question, Ataul has developed a model. The model is basically a spreadsheet where you, at any point in time, you can change the figures, configure the figures to suit based on the items of land preparation, fertilizer application, water, labor, etc. And at any point in time that you're going into a site, based on the characteristics of the site, the size of the acreage, the number of steps required, the fertilizer requirements, and so on, you'll be able to generate at least a fairly good estimate, right? But Ataul, in terms of anybody who wants to start a green business, let's for instance, a green business in vetiver, all right, in Jamaica, how easy is it to use that model and adapt that model in any of the circumstances, any of the territories in the islands? In your opinion, how easy is it?
Well, it is very easy because that was one of the requirements of me developing the cost of production. And again, anybody who's familiar with Excel, again, based on the particular scenario, could always just insert a line and plug in the values and get the cost of production for that particular commodity. So we actually in developing this cost of production, we looked at scenarios in Antigua, in St. Lucia, Troy as well too, in Dominica. So you know there's a very, very flexible model. And again, even the currency as well too could be changed as well based on their particular scenario, because we looked at Trinidad scenario in the first instance. So it's very, very easy to change it out, Amachan.
Okay. And let me probably bring Kevan into the conversation here. If he is still on the call. Yes, I see Kevan is still on the call. So Kevan, in terms of the VetiverTT services for the engineering, green engineering, and geoengineering part of it. Like it's a business, right? And at the end of the day, the business is there to make a profit, provide a service, provide an ecological service and a solution, but it's not there to make a loss, but it's to make a profit. So in terms of in record keeping, to be able to ensure that you are making a profit or at least tracking some of your costs, what are some of the critical records that you think are necessary for anybody who may consider doing a similar business venture in any of the Caribbean territories?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a great question. So it's really about tracking everything that you would do, not only on the day of installation, but everything leading up to the day as well. So a lot of businesses mightn't necessarily track things like site visits, because that is a cost that is factored into the overall business model as well. So you have things like site visits, the time taken to, conduct those site visits, gas, vehicle expense, maintenance, so you have to literally track all these things, and that's where it starts. Another thing, a lot of small businesses, I realize, don't track marketing as well. So just post it on social media, boosting, stuff like that. Those are costs that people tend to ignore, but it's very important. I mean, I know Ataul would have covered things like, sorry, something just popped up there. Yeah, Ataul would have been covering things like cost of production, so cost of installation from your different materials that you would need, to your labor cost, to just fertilizer, stuff like that, basic equipment, etc. So those are some of the costs that I think are critical to, just be monitoring all the time as well, and not to be forgotten.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So when it is that we're talking about the record keeping aspect of it, as I said, it's so important, and I'm going to stress it because of my background. For any business venture, at some form or fashion of record keeping. Now we have manual system that some people use. We have the digital systems where we try to more promote now, in terms of one centralized repository for all this information of your records of your business, which makes it easier for, if it is that you have to compile information, you're going to a donor agency, or you're going to a lending agency like a bank, or you're going to any other financial institution. So it's good for they ask for information, especially if you want to start a business, or you want to grow a business, or you want to get some working capital. So I mean, Kevan or Ataul, what in your opinion will be a good record keeping system? A digital system, a manual system, a combination of both? What you think is good for somebody who may be starting up a new business, a green business?
Well, let me jump at that question, Richard. So whatever system is you're comfortable with. I have interacted with customers who have a copybook in their back pocket where they write down information as time goes on. We have more tech-savvy persons who would use Excel worksheets, possibly even, depending on the size of operations, they purchase a software to do record keeping. And now we have the FarmView app. So it again is about comfortable for you. To me, the more critical thing is that you're actually documenting the cost and the monies that are being spent, as well as monies going out, and monies you're receiving and monies going out of the business. So that at the end of the day, when you have to sit down, let's say the end of the week or the end of the month, or perhaps when you even have to approach institution for a loan or for grant funding, you have the information available. It may not be easy if it is that is a written scenario, but you still have the information to collate and do that. So for me, the most important is whatever system is most comfortable for you and is easily retrievable at the end of the day.
Yeah, if I could just add to that as well.
Okay,
so I totally agree is, what you're most comfortable with. But what I want to add as well is digital records don't die and get lost. They don't get lost, they don't get waterlogged, you don't lose digital records. So even if, you're not necessarily comfortable with, using a digital record, then the impetus is on you to really grow your business, that you could hire someone to now do that digital record keeping for you. Because even with VetiverTT having about 10 employees now, we still, or they still have a digital, a manual log. which, you know, they have field log sheets. But then it comes into the office at the end of the day, and every week it's updated by someone in the office who is, you know, fine with working with technology. So is this really to add? It's great to do it, you know, what you're comfortable with, but then also recognize that you also need to have a digital record somewhere, and you could always scale your business to hire someone, and that's just going to keep growing from there, you know?
Excellent.
Just before you go on, if you let us try to probably engage the participants a bit, Richard, and probably towards the end we could take any specific question you may have. I know Diane would have answered some of the question, but not everybody follow in the chat. So
Yes.
what we'll do, we'll take some of the questions in the chat, and for persons who have any questions, of course, we heard from a number of persons today. We heard from Mr. Nation, we heard from Kevan, we heard from Ataul, Richard, and also Diane. And so if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, and I would start off with some of the questions in the chat so persons could benefit a bit from it. So we have Craig hands up. So Craig, go ahead.
Okay, so good morning. Good morning, Michaela. Good morning, my colleagues in Ika. I just wanted to comment on the cost of production. I hope that that is going to be shared with us, but I just want to highlight that the cost of production is something that is important for vetiver. But when you look at Trinidad or the Windward Islands compared to the Leeward Islands, that cost of production is going to change, because in our situation in Antigua and Barbuda, we actually had to install drip irrigation system because of our climatic conditions. So those are some of the things that you need to consider, especially based on your location, right? But I think that for installation of vetiver grass, that is something that is needed. We didn't really have something like that in the project originally, and eventually it basically showed us that we need to have something like that going forward. So person will have an idea of what their cost is going to look like, and especially where they're located. So that is one. And two, I just wanted to share my perspective with respect to vetiver grass being reintroduced to Antigua and Barbuda. Again, for us, we looked at the value-added component more than the geo-engineering part of it. And I must say, given the value-added products deriving from vetiver grass was basically the beginning of a new niche. We created a niche market for vetiver grass in Antigua and Barbuda, where persons began to created different types of products for vetiver grass. So for me, where I sit in Antigua and Barbuda, I'm in the ECA office, I must say that it is something that was eye-opening for us, and some businesses were created out of this particular project. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig. I see Diane, you want to add to that, or is something different?
No, I want yeah, my cue. What I think we're getting out of this is that what Craig just said is that the assumptions that the costing model is based on really have to match the context of the country, the community, and the landscape that you want to do this geoengineering intervention. So while the cost of production template that Ataul would have done in terms of the basic, you have to now take that basic and apply it to the situation, the context, the circumstance, the landscape, the entire environment of where it is you want to have that intervention. And as Bernard would have said, sometimes it may not be heavily vetiver grass driven. It could be vetiver grass, gabion baskets, something else, some tree crops. So I think you really have to understand your context. So the issue about assessing the place or assessing the job is critical before you go and spend any money to do an intervention. So all of the experiences show that in Antigua, totally different. You must put in water in your cost reduction model. For Dominica, you must put in something like the geocloth in terms of the slopes that we have in Dominica. In Tobago is a different story. In St. Lucia is a different story. So you really have to understand the environmental context and what is the purpose of that intervention of geoengineering and how you can blend geo and gray engineering to achieve what you want to achieve. That's the first one. Craig didn't mention, but there was a question in the chat about whether you can use vetiver in coastal areas. In Barbuda, there's a sandbar that is eroding seriously from sea level rising. And there was a test plot, a little test pilot to put in the vetiver in the sandbar. We're going to follow up to see how it has fared 1 year later, but we're hoping that all of those experiences will give us information to make this model that IAMovement that I've been promoting the last how many years more viable, not just as an ecosystem adaptation-based solution, but as a green business in the countries where we train persons to actually plant vetiver, whether it's on slopes, whether it's on flat, whether it's on riverbanks, whether it's in quarries, whether it's in landfills and so forth.
Okay, thanks, Diane, for adding to that. I believe this question would be for you, Kevan. You would have shown the picture with the long roots of the vetiver, and I know Ataul would have mentioned 6 to 9 months for establishment, but based on the image with that depth of root, the question was, how long does it take to get to that size? Do you have an idea how long it would take?
Yeah, so it could be anywhere between a year to 15 months to get that full root system. But what we've also noticed is that within 3 months, you can start seeing positive results of the intervention. So what we do as well is we try to identify areas that are prone to slippage and try to install the intervention ahead of the rainy season. Although we don't really have a dry and rainy season anymore, but that's what we try to do. We try to use it as a preventative measure. Because I know that might be a concern for some persons in terms of if the rains are falling now and I plant it today, if it's going to hold up immediately. So yeah.
Just to jump on what Kevan said, what he said is that if you want success, then you plant it before the rainy season, especially if it's in a vulnerable area, and that has implications for your costing. It means no, if you're not in an area where you can water your plants properly and maintain them, you have to put in your cost of production model at least a couple of weeks or months provision of irrigation or, you know, soil amelioration or whatever, just to ensure that the plant it takes root and it can grow up to a certain 3-month level where it can stand on its own. So when the rainy season comes, it doesn't erode. So that's an important factor for how you build a cost production model as well.
Great. I see that Alvin has his hands up. You could go ahead, Alvin.
Yes. How often after full establishment can you reap the vetiver, and what is the estimated tonnage per, let us say, 100-meter row?
Right, sorry, I didn't catch the last part. How often that you could harvest the vetiver and
the tonnage that you can expect from, let us say, 100-meter length row.
So I don't know what the weight would be for a 100-meter length row. But if you install vetiver as a intervention, I wouldn't recommend trying to harvest it at all. Now, if you have a nursery setup, that's something different. So a nursery setup, you could have harvesting anywhere for a mature clump between, again, one year to 15 months, so 12 to 15 months. We don't recommend going past 15 months because then the number of plants produced per clump decreases. Not dramatically, but it does decrease. So it does reduce the number of plants that you can get from each clump. And then, yeah, so I don't want to go into too much technical details.
Just to add on to that, I think what the question and the answer are important because why you have to establish why you're planting the hedgerow in the first place. And as Kevan said, if you're planting a hedgerow for soil stabilization, you don't want to rip it up. If you're planting it to harvest the leaves for mulching, for craft, and so forth, then Kevan, I think you said between 3 months to 6 months, you can start harvesting the leaves. And one thing that we've learned by both default and by design was that when you harvest the leaves, the clump actually gets more productive. It grows faster. It has a much stronger base. So there was a situation in Antigua in the nursery where they planted a young vetiver grass, and then a donkey came across and started to eat up the grass. And they were quite upset, but they realized at the end of the day, the donkey trimming down that grass, those grasses actually grew faster and healthier. So the trick is to harvest it properly, almost down to the base, harvest it properly, And those leaves can be used for mulching as well as for craft development, and then the grass springs back. But if you want to harvest your vetiver for the roots, then it is not a soil stabilization intervention that you're doing. And that is what the important thing is. And I think Jonathan Barker would tell you, and Kevin would also say the same thing, that if you're harvesting the vetiver for the roots, for the aromatic properties of the root, those properties depend on the soil that they're growing in. So you can't just grow them in easy soil without no nice, nutrients and expect to get nice smelling roots. So if you're harvesting the roots for aromatics, like for soaps and for oils and those kinds of things, the soil is what gives the roots of the grass their respective flavors, for the better expression.
Okay, Diane. We will take one question from the chat and then we'll go to you, Adaya. So from the chat, what is the established system for making vetiver planting material available? You want to take that, Kevan?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So this is making planting material available for which island in particular?
Repeat that. Repeat what you asked there, Kevan. Sorry.
So they were asking about making vetiver planting material available.
Yes.
So in terms of which island? It's going to be different for all the islands.
So, well, I'm sure I was one who raised a question. So I was asking generally, what is the established method that you use in terms of having those getting planting material, making planting materials of access?
You mean in terms of getting actual slips from the grass itself, correct?
Yeah, but I'm just thinking that if persons who are going to be establishing the system, that they would need planting material. So is it that currently you have a method that you use to generate those planting material?
Yeah, so we do is actually there's a nice short video on YouTube on the IAMovement's page, which takes you all the way from extracting the plant to vetiver slip propagation, which has to be done by hand because the vetiver grass is non-invasive, it's sterile, so it has to be hand propagated. So yeah, in Trinidad and Tobago, VetiverTT also supplies plants. We do have a number of community nurseries that persons from within each community could access plants under the Miri Green program, which is a national level vetiver education and empowerment project model program. I know that there are some community nurseries. So there's one in Tobago, there's Antigua, St. Lucia, Dominica as well. So it's really about just connecting with the persons that have access to those nurseries to get plants. But if you were talking about actually harvesting the plant, there's a nice video showing how all the steps required.
And sorry, Chani and Adaya, but just to jump in, if you want to get plants to start your own nursery or to start your own hedgerow, whatever, and you don't have it in your country, under the EbA CBF project, we actually created a protocol with all of the SPS requirements, a protocol to prepare, to package, to ship, to quarantine, and to wean vetiver plants from Dominica to Antigua. So at least that protocol, that SPS protocol exists, and it allows us to export that using the plant protection units of both Dominica and Antigua. So if you want to get that, we can also share it with you. And what we're trying to say here is, because we have those nurseries established in Antigua, Dominica, Tobago, and St. Lucia, those nurseries don't have to move away from being project-established nurseries to provide plants to the project to a green business where they operate the nursery as a green business, supplying vetiver and other plants that may be required to do soil stabilization or horticulture or even food crops. So even if your country does not have enough supplies of vetiver, you can easily buy or import those slips from Dominica and even Antigua. They have been trained, and Trinidad, they have been trained in how to prepare them, how to ship them, and we have the protocol from the plant quarantine units in how to ship them. So that is also done, is available.
We will take Adaya now.
Hi, good day. Do we have any resource material where the craft aspect is concerned? Do we have any resource material that actually show what how to prepare for craft making with the vetiver?
So currently, no, we don't have anything on our social media pages, but there has been discussion about doing a video so that we could have that shared on social media for persons, you know, interested just like yourself on craft creation.
And again, Nikhil, sorry to jump in, but again, IAMovement spent almost a whole year and a half training persons in the islands, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, and Tobago, on how to do craft in vetiver. There are persons in the island who know how to weave the baskets, how to do the plaiting, and even in Antigua, they're doing other products. With Nikhila's permission, I want to just share my screen to show. I'm sorry, Chani, but I'll just share my screen to show a little poster now of what we'll have done. So if you can see, this is an advertisement for the value-added products. This one is in St. Lucia, Puerto Rican. That is products from Canaries, where they're making these value-added products with vetiver oils and vetiver grass products. So this is from St. Lucia, and that is one of the Canaries Foundation that was part of the project in St. Lucia. This is from Antigua. She's making lip balms, toner sprays, soaps and stuff from the vetiver oils, incorporating leaf powder as well. And this is also from Antigua. That is the Gilbert Agricultural Development Center that are making incense pouches, pillow mist. Pillow mist is a very, very big seller. The CBF people love it. Usual soaps, usual roll-on itch balm. So these are the kinds of value-added products that those 4 entities in Antigua, St. Lucia, Dominica, and Tobago would have been trained to produce. They are innovating on their own. And therefore, what we're saying is that if those businesses survive, it means that they will be demanding raw material from those persons who are growing the vetiver as hedgerows, and they can provide maintenance service, because when you harvest the leaves, you can just supply it to those crafters and they will do their craft. So this is the kinds of value-added products that the islands and the countries have been making out of the vetiver through this project that introduced them, and IAMovement trained them to make various value-added products from vetiver grass. So I'm going to stop interjecting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Diane. If you could share this with me so I could send out, when I send out the recording and the other material. Adeya, you had something else to add, or we could go ahead with Chani?
Yeah, that was basically what I wanted to find out. Just whether we have any information on how to actually get into the process of actually creating the crafts and the byproducts with the vetiver. I mean, I have some local access to vetiver, and I was, especially for the tourism sector, looking at the prospect of actually getting into the byproducts and producing some stuff for the tourism sector. So I'm looking for instructional manual, instructional videos, any research that that has been done in the past to actually get into that part.
Last jump in, sorry, but Ataul also did a template for the cost of production of doing handicraft. So that template is also there to try to see what it costs versus how you can price it and so forth. So
thanks, Diane. And any material Diane will share with me and I will share with everyone. Chani, go ahead.
Yeah, hi colleagues. Very, very interesting discussion. I just wanted to perhaps, for those that want a greater understanding of not just the vetiver and how these things work, but also as a geoengineering solution. One of the things that, and to be very specific, it is not really the length of the root of a particular plant that is the basis of its usefulness. It's what we call the root reinforcement strength. And that is a very, very important thing, because a root like what was shown in the picture, it could grow and you could get that root where you have a very loose soil and you can have a lot of roots, but if the reinforcement strength is not great, then you will not get the stabilization. So point blank, what the literature has shown is that what you want is what we call a root reinforcement strength, which is the ability of the root to really carry what you call that interface between the hard pan or the soil mantle and also it group in itself. The reason why I'm saying this here, that means that in a case of vetiver, the strength or the usefulness of it as a green engineering tool is not necessarily dependent on how deep the root grow. It really is dependent on how well it is making that interface and keeping that interface between the looser soil and the more compact soil. There are some instances, again, so that we are not very romantic about that situation where you're looking at how well a root system could penetrate whatever is there to create that kind of a plaster effect or that kind of union effect. I am also saying this because you don't have to wait for the vetiver to be 10 feet to actually see the effects. And also there are things that hinder the root reinforcement strength, which are things like diseases, etc. The lucky thing and the good thing about the vetiver is that there are minimum diseases in the vetiver grass here. So these are some of the things I just wanted to add to the discussion, that when you have these hedges, the health of the hedge is very important because it reduces the root reinforcement strength. Therefore, it will reduce the ability of the plant to have the function of slope stabilization. Over. Thanks.
Thanks, Johnny. We'll take just some other questions in the chat, and of course, I love you, Diane, Kevan, Ataul, or Richard could take those. Of course, for the general participants, and the question, has there been any costing done for operating a vetiver nursery?
That was one of the things that Ataul had to also pull together a template of. One of the more developed nurseries we have across the 4 project countries under the project was the one in Antigua. We actually built infrastructure, shared, and those kinds of stuff. So we are pulling the numbers. The other nurseries, as Kevan would have mentioned, is small community nurseries where you just plant in open area. And that's like one we have in Dominica in the Kalinago territory, where we have an open air nursery, like it's a farm, it's like a vetiver farm basically, but it's a propagation area for vetiver. So we're building the costings of different types of the nurseries. And that's what I said, this project allowed us the opportunity to do different things because not all the countries are the same or equal. So we'd have those basic templates, and then they can add based on the country's circumstance. And I'm sure IAMovement and Vetiver and VetiverTT would have their own costings for nursery as well, because they've been doing that for longer than the islands have been doing it.
Okay. Specific to you, Ataul, the question, have you had a mostly positive experience in retrieving comparable prices to conduct your market research? And if not, what strategies did you use to retrieve the information?
Well, most of in this particular scenario, very positive. Actually, ECA, they had a database of persons that we call upon, and they were very willing to share their particular scenarios. So we could have fine-tuned and get the proper activities and the materials that used in their various activities. I also reside in the market prices as well too, so it wasn't difficult for me to pull that information as well too from my personal aspect. I mean, in terms of the strategies I used to develop that, probably that's what the person was asking, is that, you know, you have to develop relationships with your input suppliers and let them know who you are. And you know, sometimes they may be a little worried as to why you want the information, and you just try to be as open as it can be, but as well to protect the interests of your customer who you're doing the cost of production for. You don't want to breach that privacy, data integrity issue. So, but mostly I was a very, very enjoyable experience to me. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ataul. I know we have responded to this question, and so probably for persons who may have logged in late and may have missed it, couldn't the vetiver grass grow out of control? And as was mentioned a few times, it is not invasive. Wherever you plant it, it pretty much stays there. It's a sterile plant, would have to be hand pollinated and all of that. And so it's not an invasive plant like the other grass. As soon as a little wind blow, you see it spread everywhere. If a hurricane passes, if something was in the south, you see it all the way up in the north. No, it's not that way for the vetiver grass. It's a non-invasive plant. Hi, June. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. My apologies for being late. I love the conversation. You all at ECA, Diane, Craig, Thomas in Antigua, all you guys know that I'm very passionate about vetiver grass. I'm learning a lot more. We're looking at another experiment. You will hear about it with the vetiver grass as well. And for the person who is interested, the grass itself is not going to spread even if you have it on your farm. It stays in its clump and you just maintain it. We just recently established a relationship with our friends at His Majesty's Prison where they came and did some maintenance for us. They're almost there. And within the space of a week that we would have gotten some rains after the cutting back. And I know, Diane, you know how I feel about my cutting back. After that cutting back, you can actually see the greenness. So we're soon to be ready to use the leaves for the handicraft component of it. So I would want to say to persons on the platform who are joining and now learning about vetiver, I know my colleagues in Kevan, I know you would share the sentiments. It's a good opportunity for handicraft because we would have learned quite a bit from our friend, can't remember her name at this time, who came and did the training. And I can say to you, we have a hotel right now reaching out to us, wanting us to make a mat for one of their wedding experience at the hotel. So we are looking forward to the greenness of our leaves to start working on that mat, to supply it to that particular hotel. But I just want to say it's a really great, great commodity for persons to utilize. Our green business is just going all over the place right now. Thank you to the EbA project and its funders. But it's a good experience and it supports anyone in agriculture. Let me just put it that way. So that is my contribution this morning. Thank you very much, Nicola, for that opportunity.
Thanks, June. Of course, the GADC was a huge part of that EbA project, and June there, the head of that organization in Antigua, they have been instrumental in that development there and the green business, especially the green business component. We have another question, a two-part question. How difficult or easy it is to maintain the vetiver? And of course, given that it's, non-invasive, it's a bit much easier than those other sorts of grasses. The second part of this question, and as it relates to use as source of feed, can the same crop serve as a double purpose as it relates to soil conservation and animal feed, if any of you would like to take that?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. So as Diane would have mentioned, that, I think it was either donkeys or goats who would have came in and eaten the vetiver leaves. So it could be used as a source of feed, but again, leaves are vital to any plant's growth and development. So you'd want to not utilize the leaves until it's, mature enough that, the root system has been fully established if you're using it for vetiver system intervention. But, as June would have mentioned, they're currently harvesting grass now because as part of the maintenance of the vetiver system is that we recommend that at least either once, maybe twice a year, you cut it all the way down to the base of the grass, and that's to promote new leaf growth and to prevent any stifling of the plant. So, when you do things like that, you could utilize the leaves for animal feed, but I mean, the leaves are so amazing, in handicrafts. I would just recommend using it for that other than animal feed, but, everybody has their own use for vetiver grass.
Okay, thanks. The next question is, what is the balance between harvesting the plant with such long roots and destabilizing the soil? So of course, they would have different harvesting. If you're doing for oil, you would require the roots, but if you're harvesting the leaves, so I'll leave that to one of you to respond to.
I think the response was given, but just to say that you're not going to be harvesting if you're installing for slope and soil control, erosion control. If you're harvesting the roots for oils to make value-added products, then you'd have a different planting system and protocol. So it depends on what you're harvesting. If you're harvesting the roots for handicraft, then that you're just cutting the hedgerows down. And as Kevan just said, the more you cut the hedgerows down, the better they grow. If you want to get the roots, that's a completely different story in terms of what's the purpose of planting the vetiver. So you'd have to have your own specific planting system in a specific area where you do it just to harvest the roots. I think Kevan and them would be able to answer that more specifically in terms of if you're harvesting vetiver roots. I know IAMovement would have said before that if you want to use your roots for oils and stuff, the extent of roots that you would need to make a viable volume of oil might be too much for our context at this point in time. There are countries who are specialized in doing it. I believe like Haiti is one of them. And then, so therefore it might be, you have to do your costing model proper if you want to be growing vetiver for the roots for oils, because it requires a large acreage of vetiver to harvest enough roots to make a viable volume of oils for the market. So again, you have to determine what is your purpose for wanting to plant the vetiver. And once you determine that, then you can build your model, your business model.
Okay, thanks, Diane. So if anybody, since I'm not seeing any other question in the chat and I'm not seeing anybody hands raised, so I guess that takes us, Alvin, you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, my question was just answered in that after it's fully established, then you would cut it back twice a year, so you could use it then. But to the best of my knowledge, animals, that's one of the advantages of growing vivita or vetiver, in that animals don't readily eat it because it has some very sharp edges on the leaves, so the animals are afraid of eating it. So I'm surprised to hear now that it could be used as animal feed.
Yeah, we generally don't promote it as animal feed because of those same points that you would have raised. But we have seen goats and other animals eat the grass. Cows in Trinidad and Tobago have eaten a lot of vetiver grass. So it's not to say that they don't eat it necessarily, but it might be their favorite grass to eat.
Just to add to that, if you want to have it as a formal, in fact, a formula animal feed formulation, the advice would be to harvest it, prepare it with some other supplements and so forth, and either pelletize it or something else. But just to cut it and carry for the animals, it might not be the best, most advisable as a feed on its own. And like you said, the animals would not come roaming and eat up the grass because there are some sharp edges on the leaves. So again, the important thing is determine what it is you want to use the vetiver grass for, and all of the research is out there to help you to build your business model based on what you want to do.
You wanted to add anything there, Craig?
Yeah, Diane hit the nail on its head. That is what I was going to say, because we have had the experience with it. Once it reaches a particular age, the animals don't really eat it unless they have to. But we advise farmers, if you're going to give them vetiver grass, pelletize it, mix it with molasses, mix it with something else, and the animals will eat it that way. They'll prefer it that way. Or they will nibble on the younger leaves once they start to sprout. That is when they will normally eat it. But as what Diane said, that is the best way. If once the leaves are mature, we advise that you mix it with something and then you give it to the animal.
Thanks, Craig. Alvin? Are you there with us, Alvin?
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. As I saw your hand come back up. We have just 2 more questions we'll take in the chat and for us to do the wrap up. In terms of your experiences, Kevan and the others, how well does the vetiver plant perform for the purpose of coastal erosion, for managing coastal erosion?
So it performs really well because vetiver grass is a very hard plant. So it can tolerate some level of salt water. So during my presentation, I would have shared a picture of the coastal restoration work that VetiverTT did with the Coastal Protection Unit in Trinidad and Tobago in the Queen Anne Beach. And it is getting the sea blast, it is getting, washed on by the ocean from time to time, and it's still surviving. Vetiver grass can even take up to 1 to 2 weeks of being fully submerged in water as well. So, even in flooding instances, it's a very hard plant. Of course, it has its limitations, but it could take a lot of licks. So that's why we utilize vetiver as well.
Okay. So someone would like to get a bit more information in terms of using the vetiver grass for treatment of leachates. I know, Diane, you would have given a photo of that in a septic tank. I know it would have been used in a landfill in Antigua. So if we could provide a bit information outside of the erosion side in terms of leachates and contaminants?
I think either June or Craig can really answer that, because the Cook's landfill was different from all the other countries that we approached the vetiver thing in terms of the cooks next to the mangrove. So maybe June or Craig can talk to that one.
I'll ask my colleague Craig to respond.
Okay, so based on the work that we did in Cooks, at the present moment, it's hard to say, but what we would have recognized though is that because what we did some barriers. We did about 3 or 4 rows of along the mangrove, and what we recognized is that it would have had an impact on that particular area, more so because you used to have vegetation within the mangrove, and then after we planted the rows of vetiver grass, you didn't have that vegetation inside of the mangrove anymore. You had it more before. But also we recognize that for areas that has saltwater intrusion, we recommend that you plant it in some topsoil before, so it get accustomed to that saltwater intrusion. Because in the areas that we planted on the higher areas that didn't have a lot of saltwater intrusion, the vetiver grass thrived better. And in the low-lying area where we planted it, they struggled a bit until they got accustomed to it. So it takes a bit more time to plant them for you to see some sort of development from the plant in areas where it's low-lying, and in areas where it's a bit higher, where you don't have direct contact with the saltwater intrusion, the plants tend to grow much better. And then once that root basically gets down to that area where the saltwater, it doesn't really interfere with that plant.
I just want to add to that, Craig. Just last week, Thursday, I was in communication with the supervisor and one of the guys at the Cook's landfill who were integral in terms of planting. And actually, he said to me, I can't get to go down there right now, so give me until Wednesday so I can get to take a peek to see what it looks like down there after the project has ended last year. So I'm hoping to get an opportunity to get a peek down there and maybe get a photo or something. So at least we're able to see now that they would have withstand all that rain and the continued leaching that keep going down there. I'm going to see what it looks like, so I can give a feedback Thursday or Friday thereabouts.
Thanks, June. Thanks.
Just answer Shoba. Oh, go ahead, Craig.
I'm actually going to be going in. I'm traveling to Barbuda next month, so I myself will take the opportunity to go to that sandbar and see the result. If I get any information before, but I personally want to go and see it, because you'd have to travel by boat to go over to that sandbar. And again, once that area looks like what we think it should look like, I think it's something that we can look forward in the future in terms of supporting the region. Planting vetiver on sand, where you actually have saltwater intrusion coming on both sides.
Okay, you wanted to add something there, Diane?
Oh, just to say that in terms of the question that Shoba asked, there is a lot of research done globally on the use of vetiver for leachate control, the properties of the cleaning of the soil and water and stuff. So it exists, it's been proven. The issue is just the tech pack for actually planting the grass in the areas that are so toxic to ensure that they survive. And that was one of the lessons we learned from Antigua, that you can't just put the grass, the young slip down into the toxic conditions. You really have to give it a little more time to mature in terms of the roots. You have to give it some proper soil to get it started and make sure it's properly irrigated so that at least it can withstand the toxic conditions and to grow properly in order for it to do its job when the roots go down for purification of soil or water close by. So the research is out there that it works. It's just a matter of how you apply that research in your particular context. One thing about the vetiver is that if you don't apply it properly to your context, you basically losing your investment.
Okay,
and
so
then I just wanted to add to that, Nicalia, And that is a lesson learned, as Dan said, we had to experience in Antigua, because after we planted the first sets of vetiver grass direct, at least 90% of them didn't survive. And then after we took some soil from that area, we mixed the soil. We started to mix the soil and then allow the plants to develop strong root system. And then we replanted them, transplanted them down there. Those plants survived. We had a higher survival rate. So again, the research is there. It's just for us to just apply it to the area.
Thanks for that. We have two other questions. We'll take these final two questions and then we'll go into the wrap up. We're already after the hour. We specific on the vetiver, is it a good source of mulch or fertilizer? Well, yes, of course, it is a very good source of mulching there. And in terms of obtaining nutrients, it is safe to include it in your compost. Of course, if you have it in a landfill, we would not recommend using that in your compost or using it as a mulch, because, in the landfill has a very high level of contaminants. And of course, that will be taken up by the plant, and that will not be good to include on your farm as a mulch or even in your compost bin. The other question is, how much water does the grass need? And Diane would have touched on a bit in terms of the early stages of the plant. Is very young. I know when we hear the word grass, we think it's very hardy. Of course, we have to treat it like we grow any agriculture crop, because this is the most sensitive time frame of the plant. And so in terms of how much water, of course, it would be dependent on the area, the temperature and all of that. But I will leave that to Kevan or the others to respond to in terms of experiences, knowing about how much water to add, various stages of the plant life.
Yeah, no, you hit it right on the head, Nikila. So it's really just about monitoring the plant. When it's young, of course, making sure no weeds overgrow the vetiver slips as well. And I don't want to add anything more to that because you answered well there.
Okay, thanks. So with that, I'm going to send, as we go into the close, I'm going to send out the feedback poll while Diane, you want to do the closing?
Okay, so let me just thank everybody for the time it took today to be on this discussion on a most important day for all human and other life forms on this earth. The conversation was about using geoengineering and the experiences from this ECA, CBF, EbA, and IAMovement project, where we were promoting the vetiver grass as a good tool in our solution kit, not by itself, but combined with other sustainable land management practices, and including sometimes where we would have to use contemporary gray engineering for us to get the best of all worlds, of both worlds. So I think what came out of today is if we need to mainstream this away from project support into a viable business that can stand on its own, can create a market demand, can provide a cost-effective service, we need to be able to cost what it would take to have this geoengineering intervention or solution. And that is where Ataul would have come in terms of developing at least a startup template for costing of site installation for land management purposes using vetiver and other things that would be required based on the particular location. Now, importantly, I think the conversation allowed us to look at our assumptions. You really have to have our assumptions clear in terms of what are the particular assumptions that we're making, and are those assumptions realistic? And I think a second part of the costing template would be the risks. We need to be able to identify the risks and what the risk mitigation measures would be and cost those risks. Because sometimes we do costing based on what we think it's going to be. And when the shit hits the fan, sorry for the language, we do not have it in our cost business model. So we have to include in our cost business model that these are the risks. If they manifest, these are the actions that we need to take, and every single action has a cost associated with it. So at least we have some kind of risk insurance built into a model that can tell the person, this is what it will cost you, but if such and such happens, this might occur, and that may be the extra funds you would need to secure the investment. So in terms of the learnings, 4 takeaways from me really is what was said at the beginning, that I think it's by Bernard, is that if you're doing a full-scale vetiver geoengineering or green engineering model as a whole, it is best done at a catchment level. is because one of is not really going to help. So as a catchment model, a catchment area, you have a large enough scale to see an impact later down the line, either at a community level or a particular location. Secondly, it is best done in a combined approach. So vetiver alone might not be the best magic bullet. You may have to combine vetiver with Gideon baskets, with some of the tree crops, something else, contouring and so forth. Also, it has to be costed effectively. So all aspects or all things that could cost, and I think Kevan mentioned the time it takes you to go to the site and to look at it, the time it takes you to prepare the model, the time it takes you to do all those kinds of stuff. So the costing model has to have all of the elements that will create a accurate idea of how much a vetiver installation as a solution would cost compared to a gray contemporary green engineering solution. And also it is best if it is co-developed with other green businesses. June gave you the information about the handicraft and the other value-added products. If those green businesses value-added from vetiver grass are successful and are viable and can meet a huge market demand, it means that there is need for raw material. Where did they get the raw material? From the farmers who have the vetiver as a hedgerows. You harvest the leaves, you sell it to the crafters. From everywhere else, harvesting creates raw materials for input. So the co-development of business, green and geo, is important. And finally, importantly, do not, like any other business, you can't grow your business depending on project money. That's not a business. That's project services. So if you want to create that business, yes, a project money can start you off. But if you want to be a real business operating in the real market, you cannot depend or grow your business on project funds. And that is the whole purpose of today, to get the accuracy in terms of the costing of geoengineering solutions vis-a-vis contemporary solutions, and how we can make it more cost effective in terms of pricing to offer it to the public, to the market, and as well using that to promote the other benefits that concrete and given baskets may not offer from an environmental perspective. So that is my wrap up, Nikelia, and just to thank everybody for the contributions. We do have some knowledge products information that we're going to fine tune based on the conversation here. And once we finalize that, we will give it to Nikelia to share to everybody who has an interest in that particular topic. We are open to keeping into contact persons who are interested in learning more about the past project and what we want to do moving forward, because we really want to create that movement. Like I said, we have to create the movement and not just make the project be a moment for geoengineering as a solution to all the things we need to do to make sure Mother Earth is healthy and stays healthy, not just today, but for the rest of the time we have on this planet. So thanks a lot, Nikelia.
Thanks, Diane. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our presenters today, Kevan, Ataul, Nation, also Richard, and yourself, Diane. Thank you very much for the presentations today. I do hope they have been very useful and of value to our participants today, and I do get that feeling, yes. So we will be sharing the recording, the PowerPoint presentation, so please share those with me, Ataul and Kevan. I guess based on the cost of production, you let me know if these are all ready for sharing with the public, and I will include that in the package and any other information that you feel will be of importance there. So in the interim, to have the recording to you quickly, it will be uploaded to the Facebook of the CCRAF. So the CCRAF, we have been working in the background. As you know, we have been having some difficulties in terms of sharing the information with you. So we have developed what we call the AgriProfiles repository. So you will have access to all past, from since 2021, all the recordings, all the PowerPoints of all the sessions since 2021, and going forward, we will include those. We have our LinkedIn page, we have Facebook, we have Twitter. So like and follow us on these pages, or you have the information of the Trinidad office on the flyer, and I will send those again via email. If you have any direct questions relating to EbA, vetiver, and so on, just contact us and we will relay to the persons that can provide the information. Also coming up soon is our three-part certification series of the CCRAF. Many of you would have voted and selected topics, and we have the top 3 topics for this year. And so I will be sending out communication on that very soon. And so again, thank you all for joining us today. And I do wish all of you again, happy International Mother Earth Day. Let us do, and not just only today, but as we continue throughout life, protecting the earth for ourselves and our children to come. And with that, I say thank you, everyone. Thank you, colleagues. Thanks to you, the participants. And we do look forward to further engagement in the future. And as I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.